here's another problem where I will use a trig substitution to calculate or to find this integral. And I have the integral of dx over the square root of x squared plus 16. And my personal preference is to take the dx and put it on the side, though it's correct in either place on this fraction. So I'll rewrite that as the square root of 1 over the square root of x squared plus 16 dx. And this problem is of the form x squared plus a squared, where a equals 4. So the trig substitution is x equals 4 tangent theta. Don't forget, you have to find out what dx is. Dx will be the derivative of 4 tangent theta, and the derivative of tangent theta is secant squared theta. So 4 secant squared theta d theta. So there's the dx. And let's get all this substituted into this problem. So the integral of 1 over the square root of x squared, well, that's going to be 4 tangent theta, that whole thing squared, plus 16 from that square root part there. And dx is 4 secant squared theta d theta. Under the square root sign, that's going to become 1 over the square root of 16 tangent squared theta plus 16, and I will go ahead and put 4 secant squared theta in the numerator, and I'll leave the d theta on the side there. In the denominator, I will factor out 16. So this will be the integral of 4 secant squared theta over the square root of 16 times tangent squared theta plus 1 d theta. And the square root of 16 is 4. And there's an identity for tangent squared theta plus 1. It's secant squared theta. So this is the integral of 4 in the numerator, secant squared theta. In the denominator, you have 4 times the square root of secant squared theta. And I guess I'm putting d theta in the top for now. So the 4's cancel. And in the bottom, the square root of secant squared theta is secant theta. So I will write this as the integral secant squared theta on the top over secant theta on the bottom, d theta. And I did cancel out those 4's. And now this will reduce to the integral of secant theta, d theta. The integral of secant theta, d theta. Now the integral of secant theta, d theta, we found that in class a couple of weeks ago. We did the proof of this, and so we can just use now what we know it to be from a previous problem. This is the natural log of the absolute value of secant theta plus tangent theta, and then I'll have plus c. Now I've got to go back to the variable x. So I'm going to go back up here and put in my thinking work here. I'll have x over 4 is tangent theta, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite side is x, the adjacent side is 4. And to get the hypotenuse, you can use the Pythagorean theorem, and it'll be the square root of x squared plus 4 squared or the square root of x squared plus 16. From the triangle, I will read off these two trig functions. So I'll have the natural log of the absolute value. Secant theta, that is the reciprocal of cosine. So if you remember what cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So secant theta is hypotenuse, which would be the square root of x squared plus 16 over adjacent, and the adjacent is 4. And then plus, and tangent theta is opposite over adjacent, and plus c. So here is what I'm going to say is the final answer. I'm happy with that answer. I can simplify this one a little bit more. If I look at these two fractions here, I have a common denominator. So I can add those together. The natural log of the absolute value of the square root of x squared plus 16 plus x, all of that is over 4 plus c. And I'm happy with that answer. You can simplify this a little bit more. You can use the properties of logarithms that you learned back in an algebra class. I have the natural log of some expression divided by 4. I can write this as 2 logarithms and subtract them. So I'll have the natural log of the square root of x squared plus 16 plus x, close the absolute value sign, minus the natural log of 4. And since 4 is always positive, I don't need to put on the absolute value sign there, plus c. Now, the natural log of 4, that is a constant. I can just take everything that I know is a constant and just write 1 plus c for that whole thing. So you might see the answer written like this. I'll write this in red. The natural log of the absolute value of the square root of x squared plus 16 plus x, close the absolute value sign, plus c. The plus c encompasses everything that is a constant.